What workforce trends and priorities are impacting the New Zealand employment landscape in 2026? Today, we are joined by Suhini Wijayasinghe, Head of People to People's HR Solutions, to break down what is shaping hiring decisions, career choices, and workforce planning across the New Zealand market. Supported by data from Frog Recruitment's leading employment report, our guest industry experts will look at what workforce priorities are leading the charge for New Zealand teams, which skills are becoming more important in 2026, what trends will shape hiring decisions over the next 12 months, and are businesses moving quickly enough on AI or taking the right level of caution? Kia ora, and welcome to Frog Recruitment's 2026 New Zealand Market Analysis. I'm Mark Smith, Chair here at Frog Recruitment. Jumping straight into, there's no pun on that with Frog Recruitment, by the way, jumping straight into today, what trends are shaping the New Zealand workforce in 2026? The latest New Zealand labour market figures show a small improvement, but they do not yet point to a strong recovery. Employment rose by 0.2% in the March quarter. That represents about 4,000 more people in work, taking total employment to almost 2.9 million. But the type of job growth matters. Part-time employment increased by 0.6%. Full-time employment rose by only 0.1%. This suggests employers are still hiring carefully rather than making a major move into permanent or full-time recruitment. The unemployment rate eased from 5.4% to 5.3%. The number of unemployed people also fell by around 2,000 to 163,000 Kiwis. However, this does not mean that finding a job suddenly became any easier. The workforce participation rate fell slightly from 70.5% to 70.4%. This means a smaller share of working age New Zealanders were either working or actively looking for work. So when people stop actively looking, they are no longer counted as unemployed. So that will help bring the unemployment rate down, even when the job market is still difficult. A broader measure called underutilisation remained at 12.9%. That represents about 406,000 people who were unemployed, wanted more hours, or were close to entering the workforce. Hours worked did improve, however. Paid hours increased by 0.6%, while hours actually worked rose by 0.8%. Overall, the New Zealand's labour market appears to be stabilising, but it's not booming. More people are working, but growth remains modest. Part-time roles are leading the increase, and a large group of people still want either a job or more hours. So to break down what's actually happening in the market, we are joined today by Suhini Wijayasinghe, Head of HR Solutions at People to People. Great to see you, Suhini.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So let's just set the scene here. How has the employment and hiring market performed so far this year? And has it matched, do you think, employer expectations?
I think it's been a surprise for everybody because despite the slower economic growth and like the climate at the moment, the job market has actually been quite resilient. And what we've seen is that being reflected through the unemployment rate, which has sort of stayed in the low 4% area, which a lot of economists would actually consider full employment. So it has been surprising, but that being said, what we've seen is that hiring activity has softened a little bit over the past sort of 6 months. And we've also noticed that, post-pandemic boom, that sort of settled down. There's fewer job ads coming through. And I think employers were expecting the skills gap to close a little bit in those niche industries. And we haven't seen that. And so there's still that demand still coming through.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges then for employers in the marketplace right now?
There's a lot of different items there. And I think what we're seeing is a collision of both internal and external factors. So you've got businesses that have got ever increasing costs and they're trying to manage that by, investing in their workforce, which is equally expensive. And then that's coupled with employees also going through a major cost of living crisis. So they're presenting their own challenges to the employers with, obviously their salaries, etc. So being able to do that juggling act is probably at the forefront of a lot of employers' minds. There is also the consistently changing landscape of compliance and legislation. That's proving very difficult for a lot of small to medium enterprises to keep up with, particularly within the payroll and the employment law landscape. And I think most of all, being able to find job-ready, experienced candidates. We've talked about that skills shortage before, particularly in the health and trades industries, and being able to have ready access to those types of candidates has been a real challenge for employers.
So with so many things going on then,
Yes.
So what do you think is going to intensify over, like what's going to get, what out of all those challenges, what's going to be the sort of get more or be a bigger issue in the second half of this year then, do you think?
It's the skills shortage. So you can see, particularly within the health and education industries, there is a distinct lack of skills coming in from where we usually access them from, and also local grown talent as well. And so that's for various reasons that all combine together. So things where, salaries may not necessarily be as competitive. There's a lot of pressures externally with cost of living. And so you're finding candidates are making difficult choices about whether it's better to pursue those types of jobs or look elsewhere. And that also ties in with the focus, and we've been talking about it till we're blue in the face about AI and data literacy, and you're seeing people making active changes towards those types of careers and almost starting from scratch to go, maybe this is the next big jump. And so they're moving away from the areas that we desperately need people in, into those areas where there's the increased demand for AI capability and literacy.
So so if we flip it over then a little bit, then if you're a candidate
Yes.
in the marketplace, what do you think then or from a candidate's perspective, what do you think is the most difficult part of this market?
Well, it's been a little bit contradictory because we've got something that's saying that, unemployment is relatively low, but then you've got candidates also coming back and saying, I'm applying for all these different jobs and getting absolutely nothing from it. And there's no response. And so what that indicates is employers are becoming more selective and risk averse. And that is reflected through, their overhead costs increasing, et cetera. They want to make the right decision. Recruitment is one of the biggest expenses a business can face. And so you're seeing, the power sort of shift back to employers where they are being very selective about who they want. And that means candidates are facing really lengthy recruitment processes as well. So for things that would have been, one interview or two interviews at most, they're going through several steps before they commit to making that decision. And the rise of AI means as well, it's been a helpful thing for candidates to, fine tune their ability to apply for jobs. But the flip side is that they now have to be really nuanced with every single application they apply for, because that's the power that AI has given them. So yes, it's helped them, but it's also created more work in the long run.
Yeah. So what about if we go back to employers then, where are they finding opportunities then?
I think at the moment they are leveraging AI to a great extent to automate a lot of their processes. So rather than accessing from a particular area, I think they're focusing a lot on volume. And that doesn't necessarily indicate quality, which I think is also why the recruitment process is lengthening out as well. So it's interesting because we're seeing employers take on these steps to go, yes, this is actually shortening my time or it's being more efficient. But is it really? Because we're spending time in other things now. And has it actually reduced the total time spent on that work? But I think it's also what you're seeing is employers investing in internal mobility because of that. So there's all these external factors that may or may not be beyond their control, but what they can do, which is probably a more cost-effective investment, is to go, how can I upskill my current workforce that already knows how we operate?
Yeah. Okay. So with AI and a lot of this uncertainty, then, so candidates or job seekers out there, what opportunity? So how can they take greater control of their career given the current circumstance? Then,
I think one of the biggest things that they can do is upskilling through the wealth of resources available to everybody now. 10 years ago, a lot of these short courses were gate kept behind a lot of different paywalls, etc. And, there was a lot of financial investment that you had to put through. But now with the explosion of AI, for better, for worse, there's obviously a lot of controversy around that, but it gives you access to being able to self-learn and find those micro credentials that can sort of set you up for a career shift or taking the next step in your career path. So they need to take advantage of that, and they also need to move away from the concept that career paths are linear. I think being able to go, okay, this may not necessarily be the next stepping stone, but I could potentially do a little bit of a sidestep to go elsewhere. It's kind of like the 2 steps back for 3 steps forward situation, in a different way. And if they take advantage of that, and absolutely data literacy and AI literacy is a must as a part of that process. It's inescapable.
Okay, so if a candidate then has got this opportunity to take on or to do more of their own individualized learning and to help themselves out themselves, what do you think is the biggest shift from that employers are expecting from new hires as they come into their team? So if they wanted to align some of that learning to what people are expecting from their new staff, what should they do?
It's having the flexibility and the adaptability for not assuming the career is going to be linear, like we just discussed. And the reason why I want to bring it back to that is because this all ties in together, right? So we're talking about AI literacy, and the reason why it's so core is because we don't know what we don't know at this point. It's still in such a discovery phase, and that's why it feels so powerful, because we haven't explored every single avenue that's open to us. And so what employers are seeking are people who are going to be malleable and adaptable to that environment, to go, nothing is set in stone anymore. So, the way we do things now, and that could be in whatever industry, it could change. You could come up with the next big idea. And it realistically is that way if you are able to get yourself to a position where you can work with AI competently. And I think being able to communicate and collaborate, interestingly, in an environment where hybrid work and working from home, which, I'm a big proponent of and support, it has presented its challenges for collaboration and communication. It's much easier to hide behind emails, etc. And so now we're seeing a focus on heightening those skills and building on those skills, being able to connect through screens. It's much harder than being face to face. So it's not necessarily a move away from that hybrid or working from home model, but it's enhancing the skill and capability that employees are going to bring. Just holding the conversation is no longer enough.
Yeah. So what's essential? What are these essential skills that people are still? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There certainly is, and people don't know what they don't know, and you've got to be adaptable. But what is essential for 2026 for somebody in the workplace?
So I think AI literacy and data literacy need to be viewed as a fundamental, like MS Office, as it was, 15, 20 years ago. We learnt those things in school. It was bread and butter. It didn't matter. I think people get into this concept of, well, I work in health. Why would I need to know about AI? But you use MS Office in health. You use Word or the PowerPoint or Notepad or whatever it might be. Basic literacy in that is going to be absolutely essential. The ability to have a continuous learning mindset rather than going, I've learnt what are the parameters of my job, and that is the extent of it. Which is going to be challenging, I think, for the newer generation. I don't like to lean into generational stereotypes, but if we are going to talk about that, Gen Z have the old adage of, I just do what's expected of me, right? And that's what you pay me to do, and that's what I'm going to do. But there's such an opportunity here. And, when we go through these huge transitions of the way that we work, and you see that every, 20, 30 years, the people who are able to sort of grasp and go, my cup is empty and I'm ready to just receive whatever is there for me and not be limited by, this is my job and this is the siloed, job description that I'm going to do. How can I improve? What can I bring in extra? Especially when it's at your fingertips as well through tech. I think if you have that approach, it's going to set you apart from almost 95% of everybody else who's using it to just go, polish this email for me.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like there's a lot of momentum over the course of the year around AI then. So So what are the conversations around AI actually looking like then? When you're sitting down with candidates and clients, etc., what are those conversations around AI? Is it more of what you've just said, or is it different?
A little bit, but it's progressed heavily. So 12 months ago, it was, should we use it? Do we need to use it? Is it worth the time? Whereas now it's more about how do we actually use it and how are we going to implement it and how much is it going to cost? I think it's shifted from do we need it to we absolutely need it or we're going to fall behind. And it's interesting because we did a podcast probably this time last year on a similar conversation where this was the precipice, right? But it was the same experience of when social media was about to go boom and we went from just sharing photos to using it as a business platform. And I think we've seen that 12-month period now, and except it's going to go on for a lot longer. And so the conversations are going to be more about how do we get everybody literate in this new tool.
Yes.
And it's no longer do we need to, or is it only for the leadership team? It's everybody. And that's where the conversation has shifted.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, so if people do want to talk to you, how would they get in touch with you, Suhini?
So they can email me or contact me on my mobile, which will appear a little bit later or below the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But they can also connect on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to send across, any of our capability statements because it's a changing world out there, and what we do best is create bespoke solutions for our clients, and I'd be happy to see how we can assist.
Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you'd like a deeper dive into salaries, benefits, and workplace trends across your market, you can still request your copy of People to People and Frog Recruitment's Employment and Salary Report by scanning the QR code on the screen now or clicking the link in the comments below. Lastly, whether you're looking to grow your career or build your team with the right talent, Frog Recruitment can help. As an award-winning agency, we have industry-leading teams across New Zealand, specialist recruiters in every major market. Contact details are on screen now. We'll see the links in the comments to reach out to one of our teams today. Thanks for joining us for the 2026 Market Update. We'll see you next time.